Okay, we're going to do a little demo, a little lesson on forging. Forging for jewelry making, metalsmithing type tasks. Just want to show you a couple examples here of what we can do with a forging hammer. This is a cross, obviously, made out of 12 gauge sterling. 12 gauge sterling wire. And you can see how we've widened it with our forging hammer. You can see the marks of the forging hammer on that. Let's show you this sideways too. Okay. This handle on this ladle started out as this. Okay, and by forging we widened it out to that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you the forging hammers that I use, the anvil that I use, which is covered up by a towel right now. And I'm going to do little forging demos, but I'm going to do them on pieces of pewter. And I'll tell you why and show you why in a minute. All right. All right, we're at the forging bench here. This is my anvil. I probably should have a scale to show you how big it is. So the flat surface of the anvil measures about 9 inches, 8 3/4 by 3 1/4. I don't know the brand name on this anvil, to be honest with you. I bought it many years ago. It's a good anvil. Why do I have surgical tubing around the horn of the anvil? Because it muffles the ring of the anvil some. Some people, I know, some blacksmiths will hang magnets on there. It's supposed to do the same thing. I didn't have any giant magnet. I put that on. It worked really well. I've left it there. So when I got this anvil, the corners were sharp, the edges were sharp, and I was taught by, I believe, John Cogswell taught us that when you get an anvil, you should round those off, and I did so. Forging hammers. I have 3 basic forging hammers. As you'll notice, it's mirror polished on both ends. This is the cross peen side. That shape is a cross peen versus a, let me grab a ball peen here, versus a ball peen, right? That's a ball peen hammer. Hemispherical, or the cross peen is what I just showed you. This hammer weighs 600 grams. This is the one I use the most. Let me show you my other ones. This is a 800 gram hammer. You can see the size difference, especially from the top. From the side, not hardly at all. A little bit. I don't use this one much. Of course, this is polished as well, mirror polished. And I have a 1,000 gram hammer. Now this one doesn't have near the polish on it because I don't use it very often. And it's like, why polish it and let it sit around? I'll polish it up if and when I go to use it again. There's the size difference on that. You can see this is considerably bigger than the 600, which I use the most. There's the 1000. 1000. I did use the 1000 on the ladle to get when I was working. Well, let's get that. When I was working this piece of round copper stock, yeah, I used it just to move. I had to move a lot. As you can tell, I had to move a lot. So I did use the 1000 on that, but I rarely use it. So, pewter. Why am I using pewter? Pewter moves quick. I can remelt my pewter and cast it into little bars. Let me show you that. All you do, take a piece of hardwood and route slots in it with a router, regular old router. You can tell I have different sizes here. I stepped over here and made 2 routes with it, where this is one that looks like about 1.5, 1.5. Up here I probably chiseled, looks like I chiseled, like a little gate, little area to make it easier to pour my pewter in. And then this other side of the mold, if you want to call it a mold, is simply a flat piece of hardwood. And you can see let's see here, I chiseled that. Maybe I used a Dremel, I don't know. But you're making an area so that it's easier to pour your pewter in. That's all. And what I do is I clamp this in a vise down here, and then I'll use a C-clamp up here to keep it tighter. One caveat, one warning. The first time you pour each day, let's say you pour 3 days in a row, the first pour of the day will not be a good pour. What you're doing is sort of boiling out or steaming out the moisture in the wood. So your pewter, it's always wise to wear safety glasses when you're casting anything. But when you pour the pewter in this wood mold, it'll start spitting out the first time. Those ones are always bad. Those ones I always just remelt and cast again. And what it makes, what comes out of that mold, are these pewter rods. And very good for students practicing how to forge. Very good for a demo to show you how to forge, because like I said, they move easily, they move quickly. When I cast, I melt my scrap pewter in a ladle. I don't remember where I got these ladles, to be honest with you. This is just your typical ladle, not a very good one. I tell you the truth, I seldom use this one. I don't particularly like it. It's got a bigger capacity than the other one I'm about to show you. The other one is what I like to use when I'm casting, and this is called a bottom pouring ladle. You can see that hole in the bottom there. And when you pour out of this bottom pouring, it takes the metal out of the bottom and leaves it's called dross. It leaves the scum, the nasty stuff on top, where the regular old ladle, actually when you use the regular old ladle, it usually leaves that dross on the inside of the ladle, and you usually have a pretty clean pour with pewter, at least. I never tried it with silver. Oh, I didn't try either of those with silver. I use a ceramic thing to melt my silver in when I cast silver. Crucible. There we go. The old brain's working. Crucible. So let's see if I can show you what I'm going to do here. Forging. Let's talk a wee bit about forging. Let's do something that's not forging. That is forming. When you bend something, when you shape it around a mandrel. Oh, I don't have that in camera. If I take this on the horn of the anvil and make it round. I'm forming it. All right. Isn't pewter nice? Yeah, you're not like, I'm not Superman. Pewter's just so easy to move. My favorite saying, and I don't know who coined the phrase or coined this saying, but my favorite saying about pewter is clay that thinks it's metal. So, let's do a little bit of, forging. Forming versus forging. Forging is actually changing the cross section of the metal. So the cross section of this right now is a rectangle that size, right? You can see that size. So let's do a real simple forge with the flat side of my hammer. When you work, when I'm teaching, I watch what I do. And that's what I tell my students. And I just watched what I did. I do it all the time. When you're forging on an anvil, this is the way you want to do it. You don't want to do it with your finger or thumb or any part that gets squashed and hurt on the anvil. If you can, you want to put your hand up against the anvil and the fingers and thumbs off of the anvil. So, forging. Right now I'm going to tilt my hammer a little bit. Tilt it in the way. Okay, let's see here if I can show you. This would be like a direct hit. I'm going to tilt it that way because I want the front end of this thinner than the back. So, we just forged that. The cross section is now different than it was before I forged it. Now that's a very simple way to forge, just using the flat side, but you don't get as much movement out of that. Let's work this other side. Let me cut a little bit of that off so I get a square end here. Usually when I'm both pieces that I showed you, the cross, for example. The cross started out as round wire, and so did the handle of the ladle. So when I'm starting off with a round wire, let's get a piece of copper here. I always like to work with straight material if I can. So I'm not going to agonize over that too much. But when I would be forging something like a round piece of wire, I would tilt my hammer and just do a few pops there. I'd do a few. See, we've already got a bend in that because I didn't straighten it nicely. Then I would switch to my cross peen side, and I hope I'm not blocking you here. I still have that same angle, that same tilt. And you can see we've widened it. Let me zoom in a little bit on that. Okay, I've widened it, and you can see what I consider nice hammer marks on that. I call that, let's get a little focus here. I call that seeing the hand. I mean, you don't see that from things that aren't handmade. If you do, well, you don't. Let me widen that out a little more with the close-up. See if I can keep on camera here. The hammer is still tilted, and if you notice, I'm doing little micro rotates. Look at my thumb too. I'm holding down on that pretty tight. Thumb's turning white. Just these little micro. Hammer drops in the same place most of the time. Okay, and it's the material, the stock that I move. Okay, so it's like, well, wait a minute. What about on the cross? You had it forged way up. Yes. So I'm not just stopping at the distance of my hammer, the width of my hammer. Okay, I move back, And I call it working the bumps. I work that bump in the middle, and now I start moving my hammer back a little bit. And you can move back up, blend things in, make it nice. Okay, so you can see what we're getting there, and how you could make that cross or that handle of the ladle. But let's do a little pewter. Same technique. I'm going to do a couple, I call it a couple pops. Turn my hammer, keeping the hammer at an angle, just a slight angle, rotating the pewter. Now I'm going to step back, work the bump, step back again, work the bump. And what I'm looking for, sometimes if you're hammering too much on one side, the piece will curve. You can see I've got a pretty consistent cross section there. You want that too. You don't want it thin on one side, thick on the other. You'll definitely see it bending if you do that, if you do it wrong. So let's just clean this up a little bit. And you can see I'm choked up on the hammer. Okay, I'm right here on my hammer. This would be, if you were back here, you'd be trying to get some action out of it. I never do that on this kind of work. I'm always choked up on it. And it's a wrist action. I'm not working on small things like this. I'm not working from the elbow. Let's get a little more of this. Just do a little more of this. And what I'm doing now is refining it. I'm watching those hammer marks, okay? I'm watching them develop. You can see it's starting to curve a little that way, which means I'm thinning it up a little bit more here than the bottom. And as you get it to where you want it, you start lightening up on your hammer marks. Like if I move back here to start forging this area of the bump, working the bump, I'm going to hit harder. But as I move up here to make it pretty, lighter hammer strokes. Okay, so that's where that is. Now, if this was a piece of copper or silver or gold, it would be getting harder as we forged it. It would be work hardening. Pewter, pewter is the strangest metal, but I love it. Pewter actually gets softer. They call it work softening. I had taken a workshop from the pewter master, Mr. Fred Fenster, and in one afternoon, maybe morning, afternoon, one demonstration, I learned so much from that man. I'm eternally grateful to him. I've done quite a bit of pewter work, and it's a joy. It's different. It's totally different than silver or copper, but it's wonderful stuff. So let me show you something else about forging. Let's take another piece of pewter here. I'm going to show you how we can bend our metal by forging it. If I tilt my hammer and thin this side towards the camera, towards here, I'm sorry, thin that. I'm going to tilt my hammer that way. You can see that baby bending already. It bends away from the thinned area. And that's going to work on any metal that you forge. Isn't that interesting? Oh, I think it is. Just forging that way. And you can use this to an effect. I've done this on silver and copper bracelets. So we want a wavy pattern. So we just start working that other side. keeping the hammer tilted towards the side we want to have the curve. That's not very pretty. Let's pretty that up a little bit. So yeah, like I said, I've done entire bracelets this way. Zigzag, zigzag. And still not very pretty, is it? Look at the cross section here. It's uneven. I've got it thinner there, thicker there. Just for the heck of it, let's pretty it up a little bit more. Lighter strokes, just like I showed you on the copper. Lighter strokes when I'm detailing it. Let's pretty this side up a little bit. And one thing too, I see that I haven't completely hit down to the bottom of the curve. And I would just, if I were making a bracelet, I would just want hammer marks all the way down to the bottom of the metal. There you go. And so we showed you this. We showed you, I call that like a fishtail type of thing, right? That was that. And I showed you how to curve it. So what you can also do is lengthen your metal. Let's get that scale over here. Okay. Let's measure this baby. This is 6 3/4. Okay, now let's lengthen this baby by forging. The metal always moves right angles to the face of the crosspeen. So the metal is going to move this way and this way, which you saw when we did our fishtail shape. So let's make this piece longer. Okay, yes, my thumb is on the anvil. I could do it this way. I'd have to turn the anvil, which I would do if I was working on my own, but just for the camera's sake. Now here we're hammering straight down. I'm not tilting my hammer unless I see it starting to go curved. If I see it starting to curve, just like we showed you on the curved way, if it's thinning out on this side, it's curving that way, and vice versa. So if I see it thinning, if I see it curving, then I can tilt my hammer in the proper direction to stop that. Let's see how much we gained here. Let's turn it over and just get it straight. Get our scale. It is now a full 7 inches. Yeah, pretty neat. So those are the basics of forging. That's all I really wanted to cover in this demo, in this video, the basics of forging. What I would like to do in some videos after this on forging, I've already got bent forged rings video made. I just need to edit it. Let me get those things on here. These are I made 3 pieces when I was making that video. Very simple. These, when I used to teach, these were almost always my first project for my students. A bent forged. Let's zoom in a little bit on those. Come on, there we go. Bent forged ring. That's a 10 gauge wire. This is another 10 gauge wire. Round sterling. Bent forged. Now the bends in those, I did not forge those bends, did not forge the curves. I bent those with pliers, and then we forged. Like I said, I've got the video made. It just needs edited and uploaded. Lord knows when that'll happen. Now this is 12 gauge. You can see the difference in a 12 gauge ring and a 10 gauge ring. But the thick and the thin parts, I call it variation of line. That's what we use our hammer for. We use a planishing hammer. Let me show you a planishing hammer just so I don't get ahead of myself here. This is a planishing hammer, and when I'm doing a bent forged ring, let's zoom out a little bit, guys. This is a planishing hammer, and when I'm doing a bent forged ring, I use this flat side. And this side has a bit of a crown. Sometimes I use that to sort of dish out the flats that I've forged on there. So that is about it for this video. It was just a basic, let you see what forging can do. There, now that baby's, that's the way it should look. These hammers, let me tell you what I want to do. Forging wise, I want to do that cross, demo on that. I want to do, I've already done the bent forged rings, I told you that. I want to do a polishing a hammer up. If you have a hammer right from the factory, your piece is going to look bad, and you'll have to polish the piece after you hammer it. And polishing forging ruins forging. It takes the hand out of it. It dulls all the pretty marks that you put in. So definitely would like to do that cross video. I've got a very simple forged bracelet. I meant to bring one of those down and forgot it, which is a totally cold project. The cross is a hot project. It's got several solder jobs on it. So I guess that's it for now. If you want to, you can put, write a comment telling me what you might want to see. Like I said, maybe I didn't say it in this one. This is the second video I've taped, but only the first one. It's very simple. I should be able to upload this one quickly with little to no editing. So I've taught jewelry making, metalsmithing, pewter smithing for over 15 years. I do chasing, I do pewter vessels, lots of things. Some of them are too involved to have a video series, be a long series, but give me your thoughts. I would like to see one. Let me tell you a story. I'm about stories. When I taught one of my students, we were probably halfway or so through the series of lessons that they were taking. And, we had options. What might you want me to teach you? And I asked the students that. What would you like me to teach you? And a student of mine, Sally, I think she gave a great answer. She said, I'd like you to teach us what you're best at. And that's not necessarily what I'm going to do here. I think probably one of my best skills is chasing. So maybe we can do a chase. I've chased pewter. Pewter is a different animal all the way around. Let me get I got a chased piece over here. Now this piece isn't polished and it isn't finished. It starts out as 24 gauge. Chasing starts out as 24 gauge silver. Yeah. And this one obviously is like a sort of a werewolf figure. And like I said, he's not done. He needs a pretty good amount of work yet. But you do it over a bowl, a cast iron bowl generally, filled with a product called pitch, and you make your own tools. I guess I'm getting a little bit out of forging, but hey, that's the way conversations go. These are forging tools that you make, chasing tools that you make. I learned chasing from, let's get this thing up here. Very simple tools. It's not like you're making a pair of pliers or a saw. Very simple tools. I learned how to chase from Charles Luton Brain and John Cogswell. And Charles Luton Brain had a great comment on chasing tools. And he said they are finger and thumb cross sections. So you think of it as you're working clay, and as you're moving your fingers or a little tool in there, what shape you'd have to make the indentations or the whatever you want to call it, the shape that you want. So both excellent teachers. So maybe we can do it. Like I said, chasing is an extremely slow process. Maybe I'll give you a basic chasing. There's high relief chasing and low relief chasing. The low relief chasing would be a much easier demo. So I guess that's it for now. I sure ramble on, and forgive me if I do, but I hope you learned something. And like I said, please comment down below if you want to see an individual project. I do think I will do the forged bracelet next. It should be a pretty simple video, and it's cold. Like I said, it's cold, no heat. A lot of students like that. No polishing. Well, you polish your silver stock before you forge it. Other than that, I think it's time to shut up. All right, bye.